Olympic gold medalist in swimming, and more importantly, a person living in long-term recovery from substance use disorder.
Carrie got sober in 2012 after multiple stays in treatment and has dedicated her life's work to helping others find treatment and recovery. She's got a deep passion for recovery and a strong belief in the treatment saves lives. She lives in Oregon with her husband. She serves as an outreach manager for Hazelden Betty Ford Foundation, the largest nonprofit addiction treatment provider.
She has 2 young adult daughters and enjoys spending time with family and friends. And she's an active member of the recovery community, enjoys running and competing in triathlons.
I wonder what her best event is, biking, running, or swimming in that triathlon. I'm thinking she's probably got a pretty big lead coming out of the swimming section. But anyway, here she is in North Dakota. Let's give her a great North Dakota welcome to Carrie Steinseifer-Bates.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's such an honor to be in North Dakota and also to follow such a powerful woman in recovery's speech. The First Lady was so gracious to invite me to be here with all of you today, and I couldn't be any prouder or, in your tone, more grateful. See, the video, you can tell how old it is, right? I would love to say it was only 4 years ago. That joke used to work maybe a couple decades ago, but it doesn't work anymore. This is my first time in North Dakota, and I'm just loving your great state. Two observations in the 24 hours that I've been here. I flew into Fargo, so I drove from Fargo to here, and your speed limit's incredible. Don't change that. And you know, I come from the West Coast, so we have a little bit more suspicion and cynicism, and so everyone here is so nice. The young man at the rental car stand, you know, gave me his name, asked me where I was from, what am I doing here, how long are you staying, where are you staying? And I said, why? But truly, it's an honor to be here today with all of you. All of you are also beacons of change and lights of hope as we walk our way through addiction and recovery. That date from the video you just watched, July 29th, 1984, I woke up in the Olympic Village in Los Angeles, California. The 100 freestyle that you just watched was the first day, first event of the entire Olympic Games. I woke up early. Well, I'll be honest, I really didn't sleep. And I went to the pool when it was quiet. There was very few people in the pool and very few people on the pool deck. And I got in the water and swam a few laps just to wake myself up and to hear the sound of the water. For any of you that have swam, you know that sound that I'm talking about. It is peaceful and soothing and calming. I got out of the pool, had breakfast, went back for prelims, had a pretty good swim, went into the finals that you just watched in 3rd place. I figured that's great, I'm still in medal contention. Went back that night, 10,000 people in the stands. I had never in my life swum in front of 10,000 people. But through all 10,000 people, I could hear my family, my brother yelling my name. We got up on the starting blocks, the gun went off, and it was time to go. I knew exactly where I was at that turn, and as you notice, they weren't saying my name at all after the first lap. And I knew that it was time to put my legs to work and drive for the wall. And that was the first tie ever recorded in Olympic history. There have been some since then, but that was the first tie in Olympic history. When I turned around and I saw that scoreboard, that number 1 by my name, and I will say she had number 2 by her name. I never in my life knew how that moment would change the trajectory and the future of my life. That 55 seconds that you just watched changed the entire trajectory of my future. I remember standing on the award stand of the highest platform in the world and thinking two things. The first was, don't forget the words to the national anthem because you're on global television. And the second was I felt so uncomfortable in my own skin, almost like a fraud, like I didn't belong. You see, even on the highest platform in the world, I had already started and already was experiencing that feeling that so many of us that have suffered addiction feel. The road to glory, the road to Olympic gold was not easy. It was a life full of choices. I like to use the word choices rather than sacrifices because we do make choices. It was a life spent 6 hours a day in the pool, 5 days a week, before school, after school, all days on Saturdays, and I loved every second of it. It brought me so much joy and so much peace and acceptance when I was on the pool deck. What's interesting about all the things that contributed to me being an Olympic champion are the very things that nearly killed me years later in addiction. Today, I want to talk a little bit about addiction, recovery, and what I like to call redemption. I like to think of myself as the comeback kid, the one that didn't start the fastest, but I did finish. Just like what you saw in that race. I want to talk about the we of recovery, because that has been pivotal in my experience and my ability to sustain recovery. Peer mentors, counselors, family, friends, treatment centers. I needed them all, and they were all vital to my healing and to the healing of most of us in this room today. And there is no question that I would not be standing here in front of you today without the we of recovery. So how does a person like me end up here? I came from a loving home. I had supportive parents. I was particularly close to my father. He was the one as a corporate executive that would get up every morning and drive me to the pool at 5 a.m. in his suit and tie, ready to go to work, and drop me off at the pool to do my morning practice. I remember I would lay in bed some mornings at 5 a.m. and I would just pray I wouldn't hear the shower turn on, because he woke me up every morning for practice. And I figured if there was one day he could just sleep in and not go to work at 5 o'clock in the morning, then maybe I could miss practice. Those mornings were very, very few and far between. But there was one thing in my home that I learned at a very early age how to hide, and that was alcoholism. I learned at a very early age how to hide the disease from friends, family, or anyone that might be curious about what was going on behind closed doors at my house. You see, I believed that my mom loved alcohol more than she loved me. I believed my mom chose to drink over spending time with me. So all of those nights that I would come home from practice and I would eat dinner alone because my father was a corporate executive traveling, I felt so much sadness and so much isolation because I had no one to really talk to about it. I really didn't know what alcoholism was back then, and I'm not so sure even my mom did. But it was those first initial feelings that I wasn't enough. I wasn't enough to make her stop. I wasn't enough for her to not want to drink And I would negotiate with her. Can you only have a couple before I come home? Maybe you can just drink when I get home. Because I lived in a constant state of fear. My relief, my safety, and my peace came from the swimming pool. Nobody could see me cry underwater there. That's where I would go for 5 hours a day and work out my fear, my anger, my sadness, and my aloneness. It's where I felt like I had family, and my coach became a parent figure to me too. I went on to college at the University of Texas in Austin. Hook 'em horns. What? Oh, don't even get me started with the Boomer Sooners. You know, we had a mentality in college, we worked hard and we played hard. That was kind of a motto with all athletes. We worked hard, we played even harder. So I often look back and I wonder, did I drink any differently in college? I'm not so sure I did. You know, I've asked teammates and friends from school if I drank any differently than they did, and they say they don't remember that. You know, because I think we always try and find out, when did we really cross that proverbial line from being a social party drinker to an alcoholic? I'm not sure it really matters, because at the end result, honestly, the comeback is what matters the most. In 1988, 4 years after my Olympic gold medal performance, we were hosting Olympic trials in Austin, Texas at our home pool. I was still ranked #1 in the world in the 100 freestyle. We had won several NC2A championships at Texas, and there was no reason that I wasn't going to make that team. The morning of the 100 freestyle at Olympic trials, I was in the warm-up pool, and I knew something was off. I mentally was starting to lose my grip, and I started to cry. For the first time, I was afraid. You know, when you're 16 years old and you reach that level of performance, I'm not sure there's a level of understanding of what that actually meant. I didn't understand the impact that that was going to have, not only on my life, but the life of everyone around me. But at 20, I really knew what it was about, and I knew how much it meant, and I got scared. And I fell apart at Olympic trials, and I did not make that Olympic team. I was first alternate. So at the end of Olympic trials, they assembled the team across the pool deck, all of my friends, my competitors, my family, and I was in the stands. I had no plan B. I had never been given tools to know how to function away from the pool. And that was the first time that I remember drinking for the sole purpose of not feeling. I had no plan, I had no consideration that I would not make that Olympic team. So I retired. I retired from the sport of swimming, and unfortunately, I retired for all the wrong reasons. I spent the next 25 years searching for something that made me feel like swimming made me feel. The highs of racing, winning, and even training. The amount of endorphins and everything that I had flowing in my body all the time was epic. And I went through life thinking, when I got married, I would feel that. When I had my children, I would feel that. And I didn't. And I felt guilt and shame because I didn't feel that. But you see, I was searching for a feeling, for something that I would never feel again. There is nothing that makes you feel the same as something else. So when I retired, the high highs were gone in my life, and I was left with low lows that I had never experienced before. After I left college, I immediately began my career in the sports field. I worked for some amazing companies, Arena, which at that time was owned by Adidas USA. Peter Ueberroth, the chairman of the 1984 Olympic Games, was the owner of Adidas USA at that time and was kind enough to give me my first job. I went on to work for other companies, Reebok, and then I spent the majority of my career at Nike and Converse, which is a subsidiary of Nike. I got married to a wonderful man, and I had two beautiful daughters, Gabby and Maya. Drinking was a normal part of our life. We were raising our kids with all of our friends and their families, but I believe that my pilot light of addiction was always lit. My drinking started to escalate. We went from drinking on a Friday and Saturday night to then me adding in a Thursday, and then a Sunday, and then I wanted to drink when I was cooking. I wanted to drink when it was stressful, when the kids were young. I deserved a drink. I was working full-time, I was momming, I was doing all the things that we do, and I thought I deserved it. I subscribed to that mommy and wine culture, the baby on the hip and the wine on the lip, play dates with other moms that would drink like I wanted to drink. Eventually, people stopped drinking the way that I wanted to drink. So like any good alcoholic, I started drinking at home alone, isolated, hiding, sneaking, lying, cheating, all because I was afraid that everyone would find out who I really was inside. Not the image that everyone thought I was, the Olympic champion, successful job, great family, beautiful children. To the outside world, I looked like I had it all. But inside, I was dying. I went to my first treatment center in 2010 in Oregon. My husband had moved out of the family home a couple weeks prior. The way I ended up there was I was on the phone with a friend and I was very suicidal. So they called the police and the police came and did a welfare check on me. My children were very young and they were up in bed. The police woke up my kids and it was the first time I saw terror and fear in my kids' eyes. I was lucky I didn't get taken away that night, or that my kids didn't get taken away that night. But I knew I needed to go and get some help. So I checked into treatment the next day because alcoholism was starting to permeate every part of my life like it does, like the cancer that it is. My marriage, my children, my career. Again, all because I was afraid that people would find out who and what I really was and not what you thought I was. And I was still searching to find that to find something to fill that giant hole that was still in my soul. I didn't stay sober long after I got out of treatment that first time. I didn't know how. I wasn't ready. You know, I was the girl that would go into treatment and get A's on all my assignments, you know, my coloring projects and my graphs, and, you know, I was Miss Perfection because I thought I had it on, you know, I could pull one over on the counselors and I could get out of there sooner. And really the only person that I was hurting and killing along the way was myself. So I returned to treatment shortly thereafter. Yet another stay in residential treatment. My children were devastated and broken. My youngest one, Maya, used to ask me, "Mommy, do you have a friend there?" She was so afraid I would be alone and sad in treatment. And I would say, yes, baby, I have friends here. Each time I relapsed, I would go back to treatment for varied lengths of time. And I would get varied lengths of time in sobriety. I'm going to read to you an excerpt from my journal. I have to wear my glasses because I'm not 16 anymore. This is a journal entry in March of 2010. I continue to fight with you every day. You went from providing me comfort, peace, and an escape to my worst enemy. You live in my thoughts from the time I wake up in the morning until I can finally close my eyes at night and rest. I even dream of you most nights, often waking up in the morning not knowing if I had given in to you once again or if it was only a part of more of a nightmare than a dream. You have brought out the worst in me, a person I don't recognize anymore. You have caused me to lie, sneak, self-loathe. I have isolated myself feeling unworthy of love and respect. Because of you, I have become a drunk mom, and I have scared the two most important people in my life, my daughters. There are times I think I have you just where I want and need you, and then you prey on my weaknesses and once again reach out and take the best of me. I watched you destroy my mother's life and thought I was so aware of your grip and power that you would never find your way into my life. Instead, you snuck your way in and have destroyed me. I'm angry at you and at myself, angry at your power, and angry at my weakness. Angry I didn't see you coming. This is from 2010, and my sobriety date is February 1st of 2012. So I went on to drink another 2 years after this journal entry. That's the power of this disease. Nobody could love it out of me, hate it out of me, judge it out of me. I had to go and get the help that I needed. On January 20th in 2012, there I sat yet again at the crossroads. I was sitting at my kitchen table with the two friends that I had left in my life. And I remember them vividly saying, "What do we do with her now?" This disease is so powerful, cunning, and baffling, but is also incredibly patient and incredibly opportunistic. They called Hazelden, which is where I had been in treatment in Oregon 2 times prior, to ask, what do we do with her? The folks at Hazelden in Oregon said, let's send her to Center City, Minnesota in February. So like any good alcoholic, I stayed in that driver's seat, clutching onto the steering wheel with all my might, and said, nope, I'm not going to Center City, Minnesota in February. So one of my girlfriends at the table said, when I think of alcoholism, I think of the Betty Ford Center. I wanted to run that morning, but I had nowhere left to go. I had been running for years in and out of treatment centers, running from who I am. What you got to watch here today is what I've done. Being a woman in recovery is who I am, and there is a very big difference. Thank you. I also remember thinking to myself, if I can be the best in the world at something, then surely I can figure out this problem I seem to have with drinking. But now the alcohol was no longer working for me. So I made a deal with my higher power. I don't know if you call it my first spiritual experience, an epiphany, but I made a deal with my higher power. And I said, if I survive detox at home alone, I will go to treatment one more time and try and save my life. Because I didn't really want to live, but I also didn't have the guts to kill myself. So there started 5 days of intense withdrawal and detox in my home alone. I had heard voices of people that weren't in my house, TVs that weren't on, and I had seizures. When I came to 5 days later, I made that call to Betty Ford Center, because that's the deal I made, and I got on a plane and I never looked back. I had become a shell of the woman that I once was, and certainly I didn't know her, this young girl that had been the best in the world at something. I hadn't known her for many years. I hadn't eaten in days. I hadn't seen my children in weeks, because my ex-husband decided that he no longer would allow them to be exposed to my drinking. Fair enough. The only thing I was really surviving off at that time was the calories that I was taking in with the alcohol. Most people were gone from my life at that point, except the two friends that sat at that table that morning with me, and my father, who was my best friend, and my oldest brother, who also is in recovery. I think that they weren't super proud of me at that point, because once again I was stepping into a treatment center, but that felt okay with me, because the truth for most of us is that nobody was better at hating me than I was at hating myself. But I had finally found my end. I had finally found my bottom. I spent 90 days in that treatment center, and it was the greatest gift that my father ever gave me. I said at my dad's funeral that he gave me life, and he also saved my life. I also learned that sometimes it takes people more than one try at this to really get it, to really find recovery and be able to sustain a recovery. I went home after 90 days. Actually, I asked my counselor, and I asked, can I start over at 90 days? She said, nope, you got to get out of the shallow end and let all the other little fishies that don't know how to swim yet come on into the pool. So I went home and I had to face the wreckage of my past and the people that I had hurt. At 96 days sober, I lost my career. A career I loved and worked very hard for. At 120 days sober, I had to walk into a courtroom, and I had my legal rights as a mother taken away. Those are those moments in recovery that we don't know how we're going to survive, and we don't know why we stay sober. The judge looked at me that morning and he said, all you have to do is stay sober for 2 years and you get all your rights back. I said, Your Honor, please don't minimize what 2 years sober is like for someone like me. Because outside of a treatment center, I couldn't put together 2 days, let alone 2 weeks, 2 months, or 2 years. The reason he took my kids away was because I went to treatment too many times. I tried to get sober too many times to be safe for my children. Losing my kids was the most isolating and humiliating thing that I had ever been through in my life, but the three of us, the girls and myself, scratched and clawed our way to a beautiful, beautiful life together. And those 2 years went by, and we celebrate that day like we do my sobriety birthday. Two years into recovery, it took me to look at myself in the mirror because I was so mired with toxic shame and guilt. And I'm talking brush your teeth in the shower, not looking at yourself in the mirror. It took me 4 years into recovery to tell my story. I posted on Facebook a picture of my Olympic gold medal next to my AA coin. And that was the first time I was public about my story. My fall from grace was so public, and yet I was still using the same behaviors in my addiction, and I was hiding. I remember coming home from treatment, and for the first year I would show up at my kids' soccer games and pray that no one could see me but them. I still wanted to be invisible because I still felt unworthy. But here I am today, and if you told me I would be here 10 years ago, I would have laughed. But we, all of you in this room today, we are the voices and the faces that will change the world. We can end stigma, normalize conversations around addiction, and change the scope of the world. My girls are grown now, and they use their voices and their stories and their faces to change the world in their way too. Recovery has given me more than I could have ever imagined. If you had asked me to write a script of what my life would look like 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, certainly 10 years into recovery, I would have sold myself short. If you're new in recovery, don't write that script. Live that script, because you will sell yourself short of what your life will become in long-term recovery. I have found everything I searched for 25 years on this journey. I'm remarried to an amazing man who, for some reason, thinks the sun rises and sets on me. I have amazing relationships. I'm reliable, I'm dependable, I show up when you ask me to, and I don't have to hide anymore. Recovery to me is freedom. I have found my freedom in recovery. I have the most amazing career at Hazelden Betty Ford, the very place that saved my life. I'll tell you really quick, I know my time's short. When I interviewed at Hazelden Betty Ford the first time, I remember thinking, no way will this ever happen for me. Because once again, all the old familiar feelings of I'm not worthy. And when I got that job and they handed me the key to the facility, I said, oh my gosh, they must not have seen my chart notes from when I was a patient here. And then I got my first paycheck that said Hazelden Betty Ford, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not writing them a check. This is unbelievable. The most amazing part of my career and my job today is I get to help others find recovery. I'm in the Northwest. I work directly with all of our community partners, and in particular, one of my favorite, most special communities that I serve are the Native American tribes in the Northwest. You know, I've been on a lot of teams in my life, and I've seen the world from a view very few ever get to see, and the one team that I couldn't be more proud to be on is this team of recovery. The Olympics only happened to me to serve as this platform that I stand in front of you today on. It had nothing to do with the medals and the fame, and there was no fortune, but it served me today, because nothing good in my life has come without a lot of hard work. I'm going to leave you with a few calls to action. Number one, if you're a business owner, boss, supervisor, I challenge each and every one of you to normalize the conversation of addiction and recovery in the workplace and make it a safe place for your employees to come. Number two, if you're in recovery from anything, which most people are in recovery from something, tell someone that doesn't know today. That's how we end stigma. And number three, open yourself up to somebody you don't know today. Listen to their story. It takes a lot of courage to stand up in front of somebody and tell them the darkest time of their life, but this is the gift of recovery. I'd love to thank the First Lady and the Governor for having me here today. Recovery Reinvented. Every state in the country could have leadership like you. Thank you so much for having me.